Vestry sits up front. Current vestry sits up front. There you go. How are you, Emily? Just pick a chair, yeah.
That'll work. That was ingenious. That's what I was just double checking on mine.
If you are currently on the vestry, you need to come on up front if you could. Anyone on the back row is automatically on the finance committee. I'll probably sit somewhere. You can have that chair. There's a chair right there. Kelly, you can start the stream if you want. Well, good evening. I'm going to go ahead and call us to order, and we start with a prayer. So, the Lord be with you. Ever-living God, whose will it is that we should come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ, inspire our witness to him, that all may know the power of his forgiveness and hope of his resurrection, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Almighty God, ruler of all things in heaven and on earth, hear our prayers for this parish family of St. Thomas. Strengthen the faithful, arouse the careless, restore the penitent. Grant us all things necessary for our common life, and bring us all to be of one heart and mind within your holy church, through Jesus Christ our Lord. And then we're going to sing All Are Welcome, and so Beth is there. You should have gotten a half sheet. If you didn't get one, I can loan it out.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Faith and other love. The love of God through Jesus is revealed in time and space. With us share in Christ the feast that frees us. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where hands will reach beyond the wood and stone, to heal and strengthen, serve and teach, and live the word they've known. Hear the outcast and the stranger, bear the image of God's face. Let us bring an end to fear and danger. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word, built of tears and cries and laughter, prayers of faith and songs of grace. Let this house proclaim from floor to rafter, all are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place.
So according to our agenda, I'm now going to call you to order. So the 200 and the whatever year it is, the 2023 annual meeting is now called to order. Well, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Sorry, I know it's not liturgical. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to share some thoughts. Sometimes I do this as part of the sermon the Sunday before, but this year I wanted to do it tonight. So sitting in front of you are the current vestry, most of them, and the 4 of you that came on the vestry in 2020. Would you raise your hands? I think Vance is the only one that's not here. And George, you came on as senior warden. You came on as junior warden then. When we were at the 2020 annual meeting, we had this kind of great thing. We had these high hopes, a very good financial presentation. The vestry went on a retreat in mid-February, and we had a great conversation, and we went out for dinner, and then we thought we'd do something fun together, so we went to the axe throwing place that just opened up, and we had no idea just how good Bruce is at that particular activity. He and Kari got into it, and it was a great prediction of everything that was to come. And I think I was looking back at photos during that time and everything else. Riley and her boyfriend and I had gone to one of the Chiefs playoffs game with huge crowds. I don't know that any of us were really anticipating what would happen a month later. And then by the time we met the next time, we knew that there was a possibility of this virus that we were hearing about might have something to do with something. We might have to respond, and then all of a sudden we were faced with the reality, and we made a decision to close down before anybody else did. And then the rest of the county around us closed down, and then after that, the diocese closed down, and we entered a really strange time. And so I want you to know, as a parish, just how much these people put into their leadership, and their willingness to be flexible, and their willingness to deal with constantly changing decisions and constantly changing circumstances. We could meet, we couldn't meet. We could meet outside, we could meet a little bit outside. We could meet sometimes inside. Oh, it's cold, so we can do this. And their willingness to do everything they could. So I hope you know, I'm always in front of the congregation. The staff is often right there with me, but how much this vestry has done for your leadership. So I hope you'll take a minute to thank them. I could say a lot more, but also part of that time unleashed a lot of creativity. Last year, when we were preparing for the annual meeting, We had started on a few little projects, and we're heading towards that. We came to the annual meeting, and we knew that there was a bell going to be installed, that came a few weeks later. We also made a decision at the annual meeting last year to use some of the money that was left over from our last capital campaign to redo the Christian education wing, and we knew that we would probably have to raise a little bit of additional money. A few people had started talking about maybe doing something around the Afghan immigration ministry. Laura, I believe you were rotating off the vestry at the time, and that was on our radar. We had been given a gift about that time it was coming about that time to put solar panels on the roof, and this was all beginning to start. Our youth had also decided they wanted to redesign. They have a class called the Giving Project, and they had wanted to redo the basement, how many of you have ever been to the basement? Yeah, you need to go down there sometime. It's pretty cool. You'll go down there during tornado season if you need to. You'll discover the basement then. And other things began to kind of happen. And that was at last year's annual meeting. Some of that was beginning to percolate. And we were also in the middle of the Delta wave. We weren't quite fully open. We were still masking, and we were still limiting our numbers. Do you remember that? It seems like about 10 years ago. And now we stand here at the end of that year and look at what we've been able to do and what you've been able to do as a congregation with your support. The Christie family wanted to do a memorial for Craig, and they stepped up to help fund the rest of the project in the back in the education wing. Many of you that are sitting in the room contributed to put new lights in the sanctuary, which is something we had wanted to do for about 10 years. There's so much that happened. We now have a good part of our power is from the solar panels that have been put on. We've also continued our development of the mobile food pantry, our youth trip to San Francisco, which this last summer was incredible. Our music has been continuing to develop and to grow. And then towards the end of this year, we were given a gift from Jim and Barbara Adam of $300,000 to establish an endowment for St. Thomas. So I think that those are just some of the more material things and some of the spiritual things over the last year. But I think we're also rediscovering what church is and what it means to be part of a church family. When we reopened, coming back to church, some of us hadn't seen each other for, do you remember how long? About 2 years. Some were, because of health reasons, not able to come to church. And I remember when we were first starting to open, people were anxious. They're like, I don't know. I mean, are people still going to know me? Is anybody going to remember me? And it's taken us a while to kind of come back into that. And then how many of you are new in the last couple of years? Yeah. And so we've grown as a congregation, and we have new tools and new toys, as some people like to think of them as, because they're technology. I like technology. We have new things that we're doing, and we're still trying to figure out how to use it all and what it means. And like even tonight, we have some people who are joining us online as we're able to stream this meeting. So if they weren't able to get here, they can be with us. And maybe it's sometimes hard to think about our footprint that extends beyond the building, but we even have people who have joined the congregation. We have one person who's in California who's become a member, and another person in North Carolina who has adhered themselves to us. This is kind of a new day in figuring out what being a gospel, not only in Overland Park means, and being a church, but also reaching out and extending to others. So one thing I want to tell you as your rector for 17 years, there's a lot of new things to learn in leadership. Would you agree with that? And there's a lot of new things for us to get used to and to pray about and to understand. And I think we can be afraid of that, right? And we can think that maybe we shouldn't be doing some of it, and it's probably okay to think that. But also we have to ask ourselves the question, what is God wanting us to do? And how is God calling this community to be a presence, not only in Overland Park, but in lots of other ways? To my surprise, during the pandemic, I got asked to be part of several national leadership groups and found myself sitting in rooms with people from as far away as the National Cathedral to out in California with other clergy as we were all trying to figure out what church means right now. And I'm just really proud of you as a congregation for your flexibility and your willingness to experiment, but also your willingness to stay committed to each other. We are so fortunate that we didn't have knockdown, drag-out fights during the pandemic, and we just kind of did what we could do to figure it out. So it's a fun and interesting and challenging time to be a church, but we also have a lot of great things to report to you tonight as we kind of move into the next year. So I just want to give you a sense. Sometimes I was, the staff and I met, and we were just kind of, we're in the week to week kind of doing stuff, and you kind of forget. And the spring seems like 3 or 4 years ago. And last January seems like 5 years ago. And I think that's just says how much has happened in the church. And, we're such a willingness to experiment. Do you remember when that half of the church was filled with stuff? And there were, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just really happy to be here with you all as your rector, grateful to the staff and other leadership that I have to work with and our amazing deacon, but also this incredible vestry that has stood by so much these last few years. So that's all I have to say tonight. I'll keep it short. But I just wanted to say those things, and then everybody else is going to have a chance to talk a little bit more in a minute. Okay. So in your booklet, you should have minutes from last year, and I'm sure you've examined them deeply and gone over them with a fine-tooth comb. And is there a motion to receive the minutes from the 2022 meeting? Okay, is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. According to the canons, now we have to read word for word everything that's printed in that booklet, unless somebody decides to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the reports. Is there a motion? Okay. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? That wasn't as an enthusiastic aye, so we can read it if you'd like. Okay. And then in the book, you're going to find an agenda that should outline the basic sense of what we're going to be about tonight. Basically, we have some reports to give to you, and you're going to hear about the finances, and we have an election for vestry. So is there a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? So next slide. Okay. So this is fairly easy. How many of you got the email with the vestry candidates? Okay, we'll have the vestry candidates stand if they're able to be here. Yeah. So we have Mike Pickett. So Mike is fulfilling a short 2-year term, and by our bylaws, he's allowed to run for a full 3-year term. And he called me and said, I'm in. So he's running. Ashley is currently our treasurer, but she's not technically on the vestry, and she has agreed to run for another 3-year term. So not another, but a 3-year term. Stephen Stewart has been nominated and has accepted that nomination to run for vestry. And then Jeff Kincaid has also offered to run and is excited. So currently you guys can sit down. We have 4 openings. So are there any other nominations for vestry? Is there someone that would like to move that nominations cease? Okay, is there a second? All in favor of closing nominations, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. So now we don't have to do a ballot, but someone could make a motion that we accept the slate by acclamation. Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Congratulations on being elected to the vestry. And the rotating out vestry members are really grateful because they didn't want to be tellers because they don't know what that word means. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Ashley and Mike. Ashley is our treasurer. Mike is our chair of our finance committee.
Good evening. Oh. Oh, do we have a slide?
Yeah, next.
This slide, okay. So I'm going to go over this year's, our operating budget and a little bit where I feel like we've had a great year. As you can see, our income came in $9,039 above what was pledged, wasn't anticipated. We've had a really wonderful year in collecting our income this year. So you all can see, like, we've got the building use, the other income, the plate offering, and the pledge payments, in seeing where we've collected all of that total income. So below that is our expenses, and you'll see that our paid staff and benefits came in a little under, and it wasn't because we underpaid anybody, actually, or anything like that. We got back some tax dollars that went back to make that a deficit. Our apportionment has been paid in 100% for the year, and our, yes, sorry. Okay, so apportionment's been paid in 100% at 120.
You can hold it and you can move around.
126.36. So we're off $6, but it was paid in full. And you can see that our mortgage was 100% paid this year for what we budgeted and what was due. We had two areas that we went over what our budget numbers were for the year, and the first one is building upkeep. And you can see we went a little over $20,000 on that for what we budgeted. And there were some items that weren't anticipated, such as we had a door that was rusted out that needed to be replaced. We also had a window that was shattered in the sanctuary that was needing to be replaced. Insurance increase and lawn maintenance was higher, and really at the end of the day, inflation impacted us there. And then construction was during our hot months of the year. So we had a lot of activity in the summer. Not only were we doing the education wing, but we also had camps during that year, and it was probably our hottest, and so our utilities went up or over what we had budgeted that year. But also, whenever I think back, this was the first year post-pandemic that we really opened up. We didn't know what to expect this year. So whenever we made our budget, we didn't know if we'd be back in full swing and everything like that. So those are a couple of items there. I'm going to move on to the operating budget, and you can see that I think we went probably about 15 over on that, and that's where our utilities come into play for that, and I kind of put all those in the same category on our two areas that we went over on. And lawn maintenance, as I talked about earlier. The good news is we've renegotiated that lawn maintenance contract for this upcoming year, and we have something that's set in stone. So that in utilities, the good news is even though we installed the solar panels, they really didn't go into effect till the end of September. So we're going to see those benefits this upcoming year. And I guess the way I like to look at it is we all have a household, we all run it, and this year was one of those years that we did a lot of upgrades in some areas that I think are going to save us money in the long run. Gar mentioned the lights. We also had a little bit of an expense with installing our bell. With the bell, we had some little wiring expense that, just things that were part of our upgrade, but extra expense. So next is education. We came in under budget on education, and really that kind of goes back to, we had three-fourths of a year of of having everything starting back up. And then our community expense came in under budget. Now, that being said, we have as you see, a $22,000 deficit. And the way that the holiday fell this year, December 31st fell on a Sunday. And so pledges that came in dated December 31st are counted in 2023 in our year. So we collected a little over $15,000, $15,000, which takes us roughly to about $7,000 in deficit. Whenever I look at the whole year, you know, coming out of the pandemic and just some of our expenses, I feel like we can account for where we came in that regard with our expenses and whatnot. Anybody have any questions? I know, I'm like, I haven't spoken to this many people in a really long time. I'm like, oh. You know, and I think at the end of the day, some of our overages were just unexpected expenses. Like, nobody counted for a window to be shattered, and we didn't really think about the door that was rusted out. But the deal is we have to take care of it. So those were things that whenever we made a budget, we didn't think about, but they're there. All right, I'm handing the microphone to Mike.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to talk about 2023 and what our projected budget is there. Now, while we're talking about a $22,000 deficit from last year, I do want to point out we do have a good general fund, so it's not like we're, having to do a bake sale this weekend to make up that 22 grand. But yeah, we could. We could. Yeah, we were talking about handing out the plate and saying every question's $5, just by the way. So. But let's walk through what we're looking at for 2023. So on an overall income projection, we're looking to be up about $40,000, and that $40,000 is really coming from the continued generosity of the people from St. Thomas and the pledges that we've received. We've also got the plate offering that we received from those that visit us from time to time, but maybe aren't members right now. We've got the anticipation of endowment income. So as Gar mentioned, we've got a $300,000 endowment that was provided to us. And so from that, we take a 5% draw that's available for us to be able to use inside the congregation as we see that to be needed. So that's about $15,000 that will come from that. And then we've also got the carryover that she was talking about with regards to the people that paid on December 31st, and that carried over into 2023. So that kind of gives us a good sight line with regards to what our overall income is going to be. When it comes down to the expenses, so our expenses, we have a small staff increase this year. And part of that is because obviously we got to pay our talent to keep them here. But the other thing is we've got some people that are retiring, and thank you so much for your service to St. Thomas. But we do have some shifting of salaries that will be happening through that process. We've kind of tried to budget through that as much as we can as we replace those folks. Apportionment increases based on a formula from the diocese. And so we always want to make sure that we pay our share of the apportionment, so that has increased slightly. Building upkeep is adjusted to anticipate more expenses. So we did learn a few things from this last year, and we also know that inflation being what it is has caused us to have some additional expenses that we just need to be able to budget for a little bit better. So we did increase the amount this year for building upkeep for those things we wouldn't be expecting. We are expecting a smaller deficit this year of $3,606. Deficits are, we always try and keep it as close as we can to zero. But the things that we mentioned is, we turned on the solar panels in late September. Currently seeing about $1,000 a month savings with regards to the solar panels right now. We don't know what that savings is going to be as we get into the summer months and into the spring and summer months and the sun shifts. Our lights that we look at and kind of take for granted are using about 10% of the electricity that our previous lights were using. So that's pretty phenomenal as well. So we've got a lot of things that are coming at us that we still are going to be learning about this year. So I feel pretty good about the $3,606 deficit. Obviously, on a monthly basis, we go through the finances and talk about it as a vestry and look at those places where we think we're over. And we need to slow down or throttle back, and we will continue to do that this year. Obviously, the goal is to make up that $3,606 at some point in time through the year. But again, the generosity that comes from the parishioners here at St. Thomas is just amazing, overwhelming, and has really put us in a good place to thrive as a community. So, questions? $5? Yes. Roughly at 15,000. 5%. Yes, it is. Yeah. Great question. So that's about a 5% draw. That should, I mean, you know, it depends on who you talk to, but, you know, it should, through a lot of analysis, last forever when you do Monte Carlo analysis and things like that. But it should really help us for a lot of years. So, any other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Okay. So in our polity, the vestry is primarily responsible for the budget, and it's not a parish vote. However, I like to have the parish endorse the budget because I think that makes it, sorry, 2 mics. I think that that's a good thing for our investment. So if someone would just move an endorsement of the budget and the finances, that would be helpful. Is there a second? Any debate? You don't want to? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you so much. So, okay, at this time, I'm going to call on our wardens and some others to share a few things. And so, Bruce, you want to go first?
Sure.
As your junior warden.
Well, if you have your booklet and you want to take a look at pages 17 and 18, that really summarizes everything that happened. And a lot of that's been itemized by Mike and Gar. But what I want you all to take home is that none of this would have happened. And we spent several $100,000 on this church in 2022. And that would not have happened without the generosity that all of you and those that are joining us from home have bestowed on St. Thomas. It's really very impressive, and it's allowed us to dramatically reduce our carbon footprint, and is going to make us economically sounder going forward. The solar panels are going to really be a tremendous addition, and we'll be able to sell power back to Every at times, and so it's a wonderful thing. But overall, none of this would have happened without all of you, so thank you very much. I've been informed by Gar that due to canonical requirement and some good behavior that I have to step away from things related to the vestry. And I've been involved for the last 7 or so years, and I want you to know it's really been a pleasure and an honor for me to serve this church. I think it speaks to how much this church and the family we have here means to Peggy and I. So thank you. It's really been a pleasure. On page 18, there's a summary of the gardens and the columbarium. Those are managed by who I refer to as the Madam of the Gardens, which is my wife, Peggy. She wrote the article, and I think with the crew that she's had help her, these tireless volunteers, we've done a really great deal to improve the Apostles' Garden in the grounds of the church. And for all of you that have helped, thank you very much. Lastly, as junior warden the last 2 years, it becomes very evident who has their thumb on the pulse of this church, and that's Mary Beth. And Mary Beth is going to be leaving us. She's going to go off into retirement, and we're going to be joining together on Sunday afternoon to pay her respect and to celebrate her retirement. But when it comes to the management of this parish, and what needs to be done, even if it's a light bulb in one of the hallways, or a door that needs to be lubricated, or a light that needs to be replaced in the ceiling, Mary Beth knows. And Now that Mike's going to be the new senior or junior warden, she's not going to be here, but I'm going to be here in the background helping you. And I'm sure the new administrator is going to be able to be mentored by Mary Beth for a period of time, which will help immensely in getting them on board. I really don't have anything else other than to say thank you for the opportunity to be part of this church. And Peg and I look forward to being here for as long as we can. Thank you.
During the pandemic, Peggy and Bruce were rock stars for the congregation. You don't know this because they're humble, but he was very willing and she was very willing to come up. They cleaned the kitchen, they cleaned out all of our refrigerators and everything like that. They came up almost 2 or 3 times a week during that time when nobody was supposed to be coming to the building. We got a ton of stuff done, and they're always willing to serve, and they always have great ideas, and they've taken our garden on with gusto. And so I'm really grateful to Bruce. He served for 3 years as a senior warden and then 3 years as a junior warden, which I don't know if we've ever had anybody do that in a row at St. Thomas. So I hope you know what an extraordinary leader he is. But also I'm just really grateful to them. And we've got a new job for him, so that's coming up. So, yeah.
All right, good evening, everybody. Woo, hot mic. I hope you'll indulge me for just a few minutes to share a couple of reflections with you. The first thing I'll say is, if anything, this experience has confirmed that I'm one of those weird people in the church who really enjoys being on the vestry, because this past 6 years has flown by, and as I told this group at our meeting the other night, I'm really going to miss working with them, and I'll probably drive by and photobomb them through the window or something like that some night. I do want to say that one of the great things about being part of the vestry and senior warden is the more than 30 different individuals that I got to work with over the years on vestry, and getting to know those people and seeing their contributions and their ministries to the church, as well as everybody else, but just sort of being in the trenches with those folks. And so I really am grateful to everyone. I need to say a special thank you to the staff, to Mary Beth, to Barb, to Fran, to Kelly, to thank them all for being incredible partners in what we do. I need to say a special thank you to Bruce for being really incredibly wise counsel to me. And a special thank you to Gar for not only being the rector that we all need and the right person at the right time in this church, but also for being a great spiritual counsel and a great friend to me over these past years. And of course, the biggest thanks go to Robin, Carter, Kelsey, and Allison for putting up with me, and especially the kids for saying, hey, there's 1 hour we have to stay extra at church today, or for Robin when I said, hey, can you have dinner a little earlier so that I'm not cranky when I go to a vestry meeting. I really do appreciate you letting me do this with the church. So, being senior warden was fun, but leading a church through a pandemic was certainly not on my bingo card for 2020. And that phrase, not on my bingo card, is something that I've heard myself and a lot of other people say a lot over these past 3 years. And I know for me, there were elements of my life, both professionally and with family issues and personally, that were not things that were on my bingo card for the last 3 years. And I really was trying to figure out, how do I process all that? And then over the last couple of weeks, there was this interesting little coalescence of some devotional reading that I was doing. And I just have to mention the book. It's called Songs in Waiting, that some very smart person gave to me a little while back. And it was also with one of the readings in church, and it was the story of Zechariah, father of John the Baptist, right? And so Zechariah's a priest, right? And he and Elizabeth they're getting elderly and they don't have a baby. It's kind of a common theme you hear in the Bible over and over again. And it's Zechariah and his crew. It's their turn to be the priests at the temple. And they cast lots to see who's going to get to go into the innermost part of the temple and do the really, really special stuff. And in this book, they point out that that's like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing, and Zechariah was getting old, so that probably wasn't on his bingo card either, but the lots were cast and he won, so he got to go inside. And then he's in there doing his thing, and he hears the angel talk to him, say, "You're going to have a baby. You and Elizabeth are going to have a baby." And he's like, "Wow, that wasn't on my bingo card either." And then he goes mute, and he can't talk about it when he comes out, and he can't say it's not on my bingo card because he's mute, right? So, and then that doesn't end until the time when John is named, right? And so when that happens and he's cured of his being mute, he creates the Benedictus, which is what this book goes into. But the point of all that is the author says that whole thing is an example of what's called divine synthesis, meaning that we receive a blessing, and it's something that's great for us, and then that blessing turns out to be something else for God's kingdom. And so in the case of Zechariah and Elizabeth, they got a son, and that was a really big deal, right? And they were super happy, and that was their blessing. And then that turned out to be John the Baptist, and he was pretty important when it came to the whole Jesus story, right? So this example of divine synthesis really hit me to say, we are living in this time of divine synthesis, and you hear so much of it in what Gar and Bruce have already shared, and it's right there in all the reports that you have in the annual meeting, that we're experiencing. A great example is that we're online tonight and that we can broadcast this. That wasn't originally on our bingo card when we met in 2020. We didn't think we were going to have all this, and we did it so that we could stay in connection during the pandemic. We had to do something when we couldn't have church. But we never had the dream that we were now going to draw members into the church from California and North Carolina and people who watch us from all different parts of the country and even outside of the country. We've gotten messages from people who see our services. And so that's part of that at work. And in the Bible story, that was 30 years, give or take, between when John the Baptist was born and then when he really started to do his big time work, right? So I just kind of wonder, if we're in that early stage of divine synthesis, what's 30 years from now going to look like at St. Thomas? I think that could be something pretty cool. And then the last thing I have to say, it's about bingo cards. And if you know the game of bingo, right, the people who really take it seriously, they never play with one card, right? They always play with multiple cards. So it just leads me to ask the question, what bingo cards might God be calling on you to play right now? I know he's making me change mine up because this is my last day on as senior warden. So I got to figure out what my bingo cards are next, and I hope you figure out what your next bingo cards are too. Thank you for letting me have an opportunity to be your senior warden and to work with you over these past several years. Good luck to this group going forward. You're going to be great. You're going to be in great hands with Kari. She's going to do an amazing job. So thank you, and keep supporting these guys there as they lead us through this next phase. Thanks.
I have a lot of things I could say to George. One was I wasn't sure because all the biblical stories he was talking about were people having children in their old age. So I didn't know if there was a really big reveal happening tonight. And then now I know that someone's going to call me and want to know when we're going to start the bingo games at St. Thomas. So it's been, for both, I've been blessed, especially the last 3 years. I've always been blessed with the leadership here, and I've always had good senior wardens and junior wardens over the time that I've been here. I've been really lucky that way. But these two guys were coming onto the vestry. We had no idea the pandemic was coming 3 years ago. They were both willing to serve along with a lot of other people serving, and they both happened to be physicians, which was a gift in and of itself when we were dealing with medical complicated issues. And so I'm just really grateful. As you know, I'm grateful to you and the friendship that we've developed and everything that you've done, and your families, everything that they've done as well. Whenever I look out, I see everybody who's done so much at the congregation. One person I wanted to talk about was Laura Bond, because I want to thank her, because how many of you were involved in the immigration ministry in some way? Okay. This was a passion of hers at a vestry retreat probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it's been sort of slowly developing. And this year, with everything that happened in Afghanistan, there were about several hundred people that came to the Kansas City area, And we decided as a community through Laura's leadership to answer the call to take on the 2 Muhammad families, which totaled 17 people. And I don't think we could have ever anticipated what we were taking on, nor the blessings that it would bring, and getting to know those 2 families. And so I want to thank all of you who took on that risky, complicated, difficult ministry, but also the entire congregation. We raised right at $19,000 to support those 2 families. We paid their rent for 6 months. We paid their utilities for 6 months. We helped do cultural education, English as a second language, and so many of you supplied items for their households that they had nothing when they came. One of the families had a baby on their transition from Afghanistan to here. In the months that it took, they were pregnant, had a baby somewhere, I think in Qatar, and then came to the United States. So just an incredible ministry. And it's that kind of leadership that sometimes comes out of prayer. And I could look around, and I think Cheryl's done our read a Bible in a year 3 times now. And I don't know how many people total, probably 150 between the 3 years that have done that project. I can look. Marge is out there. She's been doing everything forever in the congregation, and she's one of our top greeters in the church. I can just look around and see all the different work that you do. And so I'm just really grateful. The next thing on the agenda, I'm just going to start talking and emoting, is a little bit about the endowment. This might have been a surprise to you because you're going to think, why is St. Thomas doing an endowment? I never heard about that before. It has been mentioned in our vestry retreats over the years. We should do that. Yeah, we should do that. And it's one of the things that every church should do, and it's really hard to get it going. We've actually formed committees in my time, and we just never really got anywhere with it. One of the things that Jim and Barbara did in their life is they were the kind of people that were incubators of all kinds of things in the community. And you might not know that about them, but they were not only leaders in the church, but also leaders in the greater community. And I know when Blair called me and was letting me know about this possibility, it was his thought and my thought, and was like, this would be such a great way to get something started for St. Thomas and incubate something that will last for generations. And so we have some work to do, and so the vestry has been working the last 9 months with the Episcopal Church Foundation in New York. They were established in the 1800s to help churches and dioceses and other peoples deal with their endowments and long-term giving, and they've been guiding us. And in your packet towards the back, there's something called an enabling resolution that the vestry passed that kind of outlines what the endowment committee does. I'm not going to go through that with a fine-tooth comb. You can read it to kind of understand it, but a little bit is the endowment committee is a little bit at arm's length from the vestry, and they kind of take care of the endowment and make some recommendations to the vestry. The vestry always signs off and is the one that makes the decision in the end. But there'll be some policies that they have to do that they'll work with the Episcopal Church Foundation. There'll be some other decisions to make, where the money's invested, things like that. And so the people who agreed to be on it to start with, and they serve for 3-year terms. So 2 of them are going to have 2-year terms, and 3 are going to have 3. And then we'll bring some new people in each year. There always has to be an odd number. And so I think the odd number is so I don't have to step in to tie break. So John McNown, if you're here, you could stand or raise your hand. John McNown, Jerry Miller, Becky Rimmer is ill and was not able to come. Bruce Hendricks, see, there it is already. I got you something to do. And then Blair Adam was not able to come either. He had some surgery earlier in the week. And so that's our initial committee, and they'll start meeting, and they'll teach you all about an endowment, and they'll become experts in the endowment, and they'll do the work that we need to do as we do that. But I hope that you will, in your prayers, give thanks to God for the ministry of Jim and Barb Adam and all that they did. If you didn't know Barb was a deacon that served here at the church, starting when she was started just right before I did. They used to be members at Christ Church over at 95th and Knoll, and Barbara and I were ordained about the same time. In fact, she was on the Commission on Ministry when I was going through the process for that, and so it was so wonderful to serve with her and to know both of them. And so I just hope give thanks to God for their life and their ministry and all that they've done and the gifts that they've given to St. Thomas. Okay, any questions about that? I don't know that I have the answers, but I can pretend like I know a lot. So, great. Yeah. So the question is, are they stewards of the money, or are they also going to proactively come to all of you and ask you for money? Is that right? Yeah. Yes. So they are stewards of the endowment, so they'll help make the recommendation about where it's invested. It'll be invested with the Episcopal Church Foundation, and they use State Street, but what kind of funds it goes into and things like that, this committee will make that decision, make the recommendation to the vestry. They will also develop planned giving, is what that's called. So if somebody wants to make a gift to St. Thomas, an estate gift, or even if you want to contribute to that, you can do that. They will also have a chance, if they want to make funds within the endowment fund for particular things, like maybe an outreach fund or something like that. They will be the group that makes those decisions. And then if a gift is given, sometimes we have to accept it. So they'll make an gift acceptance policy. Because sometimes when you receive an estate gift, there's restrictions with it, and you have to do things legally when you take the money. So they'll be kind of the experts on all that. So the answer to the question is yes, but mostly helping the congregation know that if this is something you want to do or would like or are interested in, how you can do that and how you can participate in it, and to help it grow over time. This is a project that is a decades project. Right? This is not we're going to do this for 3 months and there's all this money. It's meant to be something that can help to sustain St. Thomas in the long run, or other ministries or other things within the purview of this congregation. But it is very much a long view, sort of part of a congregation. So how many of you have ever been part of a congregation that had an endowment? Yeah, so you might know some things and some different stories about that. Any other questions? Les, that's a great question. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to call on Kelly and Barbara. They're going to share a little bit. They wrote a book. Maybe you've read it.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Last week, Barbara and I traveled to a national Christian educators conference called Forma, and we went with Miss Hannah Connolly, who is back way in the back. There she is. She's waving back in the back. She is one of our youth. She graduated early, so she was able to travel with us and was part of the presentation that we gave about our book. I was really proud of her. She did a really beautiful job. But she had an observation that I wanted to share with you. She went to several different workshops, the different workshops learning about godly play and all kinds of different things that you can teach kids and opportunities and things like that. And her observation was she heard lots of people in different parishes from all over the country and how much there was sort of strife in the church and people struggling to get resources to support the kids' programs and youth programs, and she was just puzzled by this. Hannah didn't know this kind of thing existed. She was like, people don't support the kids and the youth and the church. She has grown up not knowing that reality. She has grown up in a community that has undying support for its children and youth. And I loved that. She didn't know that people fought in church. That's just not a thing for her. So I just thought that was a really beautiful testament to how this community views all of its young people. We welcome them into our annual meeting, and I just think that's a really, really beautiful thing. It was a literally lifelong dream of mine to write a book, and I love that the book that I finally got to write was about this community and its young people. I'm really, really proud of that. I want to thank everyone here for their support around that, allowing me to take time to do that. I want to thank Debbie Williamson. You may not know this, but she gave us a read-through and made sure what we were writing actually made sense. So thank you for using your expertise in that. I want to thank Gar for his support, both as a husband and a boss, as we did this venture. So supportive of that. So just so you know, if you haven't read the book, it's kind of a niche market, but for Christian educators and youth ministers. But it talks about how we in our program grow young people from the nursery through high school to be agents of change and to serve God through the gifts that they have been given to face injustices in the world and hurt in the world, and that's how we grow our young people. Where I think this is headed is we're going to be exploring a little bit more making sure that young people have these gifts and skills and that they are tapping into the deep well of God's presence to do that work for the city of God. This age range, this Gen Z, they are agents of change in the world. They are making things happen, but a lot of the things they do are sort of fear-driven, like my world is, the earth is falling apart and gun violence and things like that. It's sort of fear-driven, and we want this to be hope-filled and hope-driven. So that's where the program, I believe, is headed and what we're developing, and I'm grateful to my youth for being guinea pigs as we figure all of this out. So thank you. Barbara?
So I'll just echo all of Kelly's thanks and add in thanks to my husband and children. Kelly and I enjoyed a few weekends away to do writing retreats, and maybe a little wine was involved, which is why we needed Debbie's help. But it was a great pleasure writing this book. I will say, it's really nice to be where we are now. I love that Kelly started talking about where the program is going, particularly on the high school end. As we were writing, because of the timing, it felt like we were doing a lot of reflecting on what had been. And this book is very much not an end point. We've already had moments where, something new will come up for our upcoming ROTCs this summer, and we'd be like, well, in the second edition, we're going to say this. So it's really nice to be back in a place in the world where we're back in it. We are back in the weeds of planning this program the way, not just that it has been, but getting back on track to where we wanted to continue going. So it's really nice to have been able to create a resource for other parishes. But also a part of that is we're putting together a Facebook community for other Christian educators so that we all can continue moving forward on this path together, and making it clear to our readers and to the people who listen to the presentation at Forma, which, by the way, was pretty much all Kelly and Hannah. I made them do all the hard work because I did the online presentation last year, and have learned that online presentation is not my favorite thing. But to have community now built around it to all move forward. So in the next year, starting with Christmas break, we got to go back to our winter break one-day ROTC in its typical format. We've re-established a partnership with Harvesters, which our elementary kids are super excited about. That's their favorite place to go. We're looking at a new partnership now with KC Pet Project, and we've got feelers out to several other organizations. So I'm really excited to just explore more in the KC metro area, continue building partnerships that we had, but also adding to our list of partner organizations.
Thank you all.
I thought you guys were riding on those retreats, the wine. So, it's really great to work with both of them. They're both incredible professionals who care deeply for the work that they're doing, but are also innovative and willing to try stuff and to come up with new models. And so we're really blessed to have both of them on our staff. I do want to, she's going to get really mad at me, but Mary Beth, come up here. Come on. Come on. So we know that there were results from the election, so we can skip that part. Yeah. You're fine. Go back. One more. No. Forward. One more. Perfect. So come on up. This isn't on the agenda, so I'm throwing Jen off. Okay. So I came to St. Thomas 17 years ago, and somebody had told the staff that I was going to fire all of them I'm not kidding. That would be my decision when I got there. Right, Beth? Because I took Beth out to lunch, and she thought I was firing her, and I just wanted to get to know her. And
In other Episcopal churches in the past, that's what they did. The priest would want another whole nother staff.
so I just let him think that for a long time. I have fired her 6 times this week because she's quitting. So, right, we've been joking about that, and we've been having a good time. But I just want you to know, you guys don't know, the parish administrator is really a partner to the rector in lots of ways. And Mary Beth, I was a young rector when I came in. I'm still young, but not as young. And energetic and passionate and a little ADD and a little willing to be entrepreneurial and high energy. And she has walked alongside all of that for 17 years. I know. And been willing and just been an incredible person, steady, confidential presence throughout all of that. I hope you all know just how lucky we have been to have her in the office. And it's going to be hard to not have you there, but I'm also so happy for you that you get to retire and you're going to get to do the stuff you've always wanted to do. And you won't have to listen to me as much. So
We will work together somewhat.
yeah.
As I work part-time. But, yeah, I won't be seeing you every day.
I know. You can watch the daily meditations if you want to. Would you all, we're going to have a big party for her on Sunday. I hope you come, but let's give her a big round of applause for everything that she's done. I could say lots of other things about all the stuff. We'll have a chance to celebrate Beth. She's not leaving until May, and so we'll have some time to celebrate her at a different time. So we don't want to not give her attention, but we're going to give you attention later. But I'm also grateful. I think Asher's here somewhere, or he was. Yeah, back there. Hey, buddy. I want to thank my family for all their hard work in supporting me. And I just love Asher. Always wants to come to this meeting and make sure that he's here, and I really appreciate him being here. So, and of course, thanks to Kelly and to Riley as well. There's lots of other things to talk about, but we're winding down to this. So next year, which is now this year, we have some new wardens and other leaders. So Kari, I always say Carrie, I did it. Kari, would you please stand? And Kari has agreed. I asked the vestry who they thought might make a good senior warden, and everybody I asked said, oh, Kari would be great. And then I called Kari, and Kari said, what? No, that's not true, but do you want to say anything?
So Gar had called and said, do you want to be senior warden? And I said, can I see the description so I make sure I know what I'm getting into? And he shared it with me, and I was like, that's very adulty. Are you sure I'm capable of that? You're just positive. But no, I was really excited. I have loved my time on the vestry. It's been a great experience. I don't know the vestry outside of COVID. This past year has been less COVID-y. But I'm very excited to continue leading and providing guidance and getting to work with the vestry, both new and continuing members. They're a really great group of people, and their love for the parish and their desire to see us grow is phenomenal. So I look forward to working with everybody.
Kari participates a lot with our youth group. She's gone, I think, on a mission trip with them and shows up on Sunday nights and is involved in lots of other things in the parish. And so it'll be great to have her in that leadership role. Mike Pickett has agreed to be junior warden. And so I want to thank him for his willingness to step in. Ashley is continuing in the role of treasurer. And then, thank you. And then Jen has agreed to be secretary. So Jen, you want to raise your hand? So lots of different things to go on. So the people who are going off the vestry, we had a great, I was able to do for the first time in a while a dinner at our house last week for the vestry, so a lot of you were able to come. And I have another thing that I'll do for you more privately, just to thank you, but if you guys can come up, the folks who are rotating off. So George and Bruce. This is just a small token of appreciation. And then who else is coming off? I have to remember Donna. And then Vance. And technically Kari. So yeah. You're transitioning. You're still on the vestry, but yeah. You transition into a little bit different role. Yeah, I get 3 of them. Is that it? And then the other 2 I'll give. Yeah. So can you all give these folks a round of applause for their service? Thanks. You guys can be seated. So now we're going to do the year in the life of St. Thomas. So this is a collection of pictures that you all had sent in of the different things. What I want you to note is you're going to see pictures of lots of stuff, but you're going to see it kind of going as it goes together, and how multifaceted we are as a congregation. When you sit out on Sunday morning, you might see the 70 or 80 people that are sitting in the room with you, and you think, wow, there's not as many people here as I think. But what you don't see is all the different ministries that are happening Monday through Saturday, all the neighborhood groups, the small groups, the Bible studies, the different outreach ministries, the youth ministry, all the camps. And so this gives you a little insight into the breadth of St. Thomas. So give me just a second as I transition that, and we'll get it started. And if you could turn the lights down a little bit, Asher, but not all the way.
One, your beauty fills the skies, but the glory of your majesty is the mercy in your eyes. Worthy uncreated one, from heaven to earth come down. You laid aside your royalty to wear the sinner's crown. Oh, great God, be glorified. Our lives laid down, yours magnified. Oh, great God, be lifted high. There is none like you. Jesus, Savior, God's own Son, risen, reigning Lord, sustainer of the universe by the power of your word. Oh, great God, be glorified. Our lives laid down, yours magnified. Oh, great God, be lifted high. proclaim, Christ will come again as we join in the feast of Lamb around the table of the King.
I love putting that together every year because it reminds me of everything that's happened, and sometimes I don't participate in everything. And so you get to see a lot of the other stuff, and we try to get pictures of all the different groups, and sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. But I don't know what you think, but it always just reminds me of the breadth of this, and this year especially, because last year I only, because of the pandemic, it was kind of like pictures of me by a computer and Kelly by a computer and y'all on a computer, and there wasn't much to take pictures of. And you can see the breadth and the life that happens at this place and the depth of the community that's there. So I hope you guys know that. If you don't feel it, then it's sort of, I would encourage you to reach out to us so we can help you make the connections in the congregation. I always tell people that most of us are walking around wanting to connect with other people and not always knowing how. And so you get invited into community by being willing to step into the community, and it sometimes takes some effort to do that. So we're about to wrap up. I forgot to do one thing, and that is that the parish is required to affirm my choice for senior warden. And so I have selected Kari as my senior warden. And if we don't do this, she's not senior warden. You almost got out of it. So someone make a motion to affirm Kari as a senior warden. Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody? Yeah, I didn't think so. So congratulations, Kari. So I believe. Thank you to Jen for keeping up with the PowerPoint and everything like that. Thank you to Kelly for running the online. I think that's all that we have to do officially tonight. And the last thing is that the vestry, the new vestry needs to meet for just a few minutes. We'll just stick around up here. Give us about 10 minutes and we'll come back up here and we'll do our little bit of business. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? All in favor, please say aye. Anybody opposed? Great, we have a final song, The Summons. That should be printed in your booklet.
Page 6. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Will you leave yourself behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and kind and never be the same? Will you risk the hostile stare? Should your life attract or scare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and you in me? Will you let the blinded see if I but call your name? Will you set the prisoners free and never be the same? Will you kiss the leper clean and do such as this unseen and admit to what I mean in you and you in me? Will you love the you hide if I but call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around? Through my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me. Lord, your summons echoes true when you but call my name. Let me turn and follow you and never be the same. In your company I'll go, where your love and footsteps show. Thus I'll move and live and grow in you, and you in me.
The blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be upon you this day and remain with you now and forever. Amen. Fran, could you dismiss us? Thanks be to God. See you all later.